mezzo al rumore serve qualcosa che duri.
È il Papa Leon XIV.
Storie vere. Incontri che cambiano la vita. Persone che costruiscono. Uno sguardo originale su ciò che accade. Tutto questo è Tracce. Ora anche in una nuova versione digitale. Per raccontare sempre più storie di gente che vive. Tracce, la rivista internazionale di comunione e liberazione. In mezzo al rumore serve qualcosa che duri.
È il Papa Leon XIV.
Storie vere. Incontri che cambiano la vita. Persone che costruiscono. Uno sguardo originale su ciò che accade. Tutto questo è Tracce. Ora anche in una nuova versione digitale. Per raccontare sempre più storie di gente che vive. Tracce, la rivista internazionale di comunione e liberazione.
Questo è un luogo che genera dialogo,
Qualcuno che si impegna, che si batte.
che approfondisce la conoscenza e sostiene la fiducia. È un crocevia dove si incontra chi desidera il vero, il bello, il giusto e il bene. È una testimonianza di speranza nel cuore ferito, del presente. E tutto questo
Con la propria vita.
esiste anche grazie a te.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Good morning, everybody. In the last few months, many of us have seen with wonder the images in the news of the completion of the last tower of the Sagrada Familia in the centenary of the death of its architect, Antoni Gaudí. But maybe few would imagine that behind the construction of this really high tower, which makes the Sagrada Familia the tallest church in the world, there is a network of human relationships, encounters, circumstances apparently random, just like happened back in the Gaudí's time itself. And so it's these stories that we'd want to go and discover in today's meeting, helped by the protagonists themselves. I'll present them to you quickly. Marco Bersanelli, who's a professor of physics and astrophysics at the University of Milan. Chiara Curti, who's an architect and an expert on the Sagrada Familia. She's a teacher and researcher at the Antoni Gaudí faculty in Barcelona. Jordi Faulí, the head architect of the Sagrada Familia. And Andrea Mastrovito, who's a sculptor and the maker of the Agnus Dei for the Tower of Jesus Christ of the Sagrada Familia. Let's get straight into the story. Jordi, as the chief architect of the Sagrada, I ask you to introduce us to the project, the architectural project of this central tower, the Jesus Christ Tower, and about the questions that this construction asked you.
Good morning. Thanks to the meeting for the invitation. I'm sorry for my bad Italian. The Jesus Christ Tower is the tallest tower of the Sagrada Familia, and it finds itself at the center of the church, at the top of the transept. It's the highest tower in a group of 18 towers that grow in height towards the center, passing from 98 to 172.5 meters. The Tower of Jesus Christ is surrounded by 4 towers of the evangelists on the 3 faces of where you can access the church from the road. You can find the 12 bell towers of the apostles. Their perimeter is around the towers, around which the Tower of the Madonna is on top. The Tower of Jesus Christ is at the center because we desired, like Gaudí did, that Jesus should be at the center of our lives. It invites us to look up, and it lifts our heart. The Tower of Jesus Christ is at its base 85 meters and is composed of 12 parabolas that are joined together that converge in the highest part towards the vertices. Its geometry comes from the cupola of the center that Gaudí left as a model for the central towers. The 6 central towers was projected in a architectural transformation of the cupola. So the cupola becomes the origin, the geometric origin of the tower. At the surface of the 12 parabolas, 396 windows open of triangular shape. From the outside, they come out towards the outside in a red color, which evokes the color of Jesus Christ's blood. We can distinguish the tower in 3 parts: the central body, the principal body, the terminal, and the cross. The 3 parts are recognizable from the outside, but also from the inside. At the top of the terminal, we can read the words to Jesus: "You are the only saint, you the only Lord, the highest Jesus Christ." The profile of the 18 towers continues towards this terminal, and it's this terminal that reveals the dedication of each tower. The Tower of Jesus Christ finishes with the cross with 4 arms. The terminal of the 12 bell towers are a geometric composition with the attributes, the episcopal attributes. The pastoral one with its knot, the episcopal ring, the mitre, and the initials of the apostle. Gaudí built the terminal of the first Apostle Barnaby's tower with an armoured cement centre, which back then was an innovative material in the construction field. Following Gaudí's method, at the start of the executive project of the towers, the central towers, we studied together with big famous engineers and architects if modern technology would permit to attribute the stone with a central role, structural role in the construction of the towers. It was necessary to maintain width and to not overload the towers for the foundations. If we look at how the structural elements of the towers are formed, the elements of the surface are composed of iron bars at the inside, which provide a resistance, a large resistance, and consist of various elements of their own. The structure is made up of stone, which is a skin, the outside layer, steel and armored cement, which are around the panels of stone. The structure, so in this way, can resist the winds and seismic action, and in line with norms of the modern day. Gaudí, in his time, imagined some horizontal planes within the inside of the tower to harden its surface. Today, these plans are no longer necessary, and we can, in this way, enjoy the 60 centimeter height of the inside, like in the preceding construction of the Madonna Tower. At the inside of Jesus Tower, we can find in the central space a lift and a staircase which lead up to the cross, made up of stone in a parabolic shape, which is in line with the tower's outer surface. We retained that, as with the rest of the Sagrada Familia, it would be good to give this space a meaning, a symbolic meaning. Thanks to the sculptor, we asked the sculptor what he thought was right to represent on the walls of this space of 60 meters height. Without thinking too much, he replied, the signature, the firmament of creation. The three spaces of the inside of the tower, he proposed to let them welcome an artistic expression of Jesus's phrase, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life." This follows an episcopal and theological argument to propose in the different indoor spaces of the tower and the cross the signs of the gospel to illustrate these three parts of the phrase. So at the base of the firmament are 12 scenes of the life of Jesus, which show how we are asked to love. For example, the parable of the Good Samaritan, the love we must have for our enemies, or the washing of the feet. In terms of the firmament, it was necessary to orientate it, the artistic way, in a form that was adequate of our modern times and the expression of the architectural space. With the suggestion of the architect Chiara Curti, we invite the astrophysicist Bersanelli to explain to the architects and the artist what we know today of the firmament.
So in front of this question, how to represent the firmament inside the tower, but thinking about the our most recent knowledge of the structure of the universe. So we asked Marco Bersanelli to help us. Can you tell us how your proposal took form in response to this question in the dialogue between cosmology with contemporary cosmology? Thank you. So my involvement with this incredible story started like this. It was June 2013, and Jordi invited me to meet his team of architects and artists, including Etsuro Sotu, to discuss, in fact, how to represent the universe in the Tower of Jesus Christ. I was certainly for me it was a surprising invitation, with two preceding facts. First, Chiara had already kind of warned me about this possibility, that this invitation might happen. And then a few months before, in March 2013, we'd published the first results of the space mission Planck, on which I'd worked for more or less 20 years at that point, which consolidated our vision of the universe. And in particular, it made precise the shape, the form of the expansion of the universe. And so the representation of the cosmos in holy edifices, sacred buildings, is a traditional fact. Medieval churches in particular. Often the dome represented in an explicit way the firmament. And the celestial vault was the sign of creation. Cathedrals had for themselves a cosmic dimension. The spherical form of the dome of the great cathedrals reflected directly the cosmological vision that they had at that time, in the medieval time. So a vision of a universe that was geocentric, with the Earth fixed right at the center of the universe, immobile, according to the sort of Ptolemaic scheme from the period, with the celestial spheres which go around the central body, which is our Earth. So when Dante speaks of the love that moves the sun and the other stars, it's this kind of image of a universe that he has in mind, the movement of these celestial spheres. So now, the architecture of Gaudi's towers is evidently completely different from these sort of spherical shapes. And so even the Jesus Christ tower is completely incompatible with this presentation of that kind of cosmos. And on the other hand, as Jordi said, our vision of the universe has changed radically from the medieval period. And so in these dialogues and encounters, the question was, what is the shape of the universe according to today's cosmology? Can we speak of a shape of a universe? And this shape, can it find a representation, a natural representation in this architecture? And so that was the question. What is the vision of the cosmos that we have? So here we see the starry sky, same as it was 700 years ago. But today we know that the stars aren't fixed onto a sphere that turns around us, but we find them at enormous distances, distributed throughout space. And together, the stars form families, including hundreds of billions of stars. One of these is our galaxy, the Milky Way. If we could see our galaxy from the outside, it would look more or less like this. This is a different galaxy, M101, similar to ours. And here we say, we see here about 500 billion stars at an immense distance. So the universe contains an immense number of galaxies. So if you look at this picture, a very recent one from Webb, basically every point of light there is an entire galaxy. So if we look in any direction, we would see a similar scene to this. The universe is an ocean of galaxies that's pretty much uniform. And some of these galaxies that we see in this picture, they're among the furthest things that we can see. Their light has traveled for more or less 12 or 13 billion years before arriving here at us. So we see them how they were in the far distant past. The further away we look in space, the further we go back in time. But there is a light which arrives from even further away than these distant galaxies. And this is that which we call, with the Planck mission, we observed. There's the black background that seems black to us. In reality, glows, shines with the most remote light of the universe, which with Planck we mapped around the entire celestial sphere. And here you can see its details. This brings us the message of a universe of 14 billion years ago, before even the formation of galaxies and formation of stars, planets, before any of that happened. And studying these light differences that we see on this color scale, it was possible to precisely measure, determine the parameters which describe the expansion of the universe. And so that this way we can tell a story of billions of years, starting from that almost uniform universe up to forming all of the structures that we see. A game played out between the expansion of the universe and gravity, which tends to coagulate material together and make the richness of the universe that we see today. And so we can represent this cosmic story in a curve that's very simple and very important. Here we see on the horizontal axis we have time in billions of years, and on the vertical axis we have space that expands. And from all the possible solutions given by relativity theory from Einstein, thanks to the parameters that we measured with Planck, we can see that the curve that is actually does represent our universe is that orange one, the most external one of them. And so that tells us that our universe started 13.8 billion years ago. Our present is in that red point, and the shape of the curve represents the expansion of the universe. So what does all this have to do with the Sagrada Familia? So when we'd done this dialogue, they invited me. I recounted the stuff to them, and here's my little invisible tiny grain of sand of contribution to this great thing that is the Sagrada Familia, which not something that no project of mine, but simply I realized something, I noticed something that we had in front of us, that was in front of my eyes, and that is that it came back to mind that in this curve that we can represent the history of the universe. Thinking about this form of the tower, it came in mind really this same kind of curve, because if we represent the time axis instead of horizontally, if we put it vertically, and we turn this and we rotate the curve around an axis, we get a geometry that in a natural way represents to us this architecture that reflects the shape of it. And so in this way, what happens is that the origin of the universe is put at the vertex of the tower. Here and now is at the base, and the form of the tower is the shape of the expansion of the universe. And so it became quite natural, this suggestion, to represent the entire history of the universe with symbols, with artistic elements from the first light to the formation of galaxies and structure up to the universe of the present. And there's something new here in this vision, because the creation, like in the Gala Placidia building that we saw before, that's creation only in space, because that was the image of a universe, ancient universe, the ancient Greek image of the universe. What we have now that's different, it's radically different, is that we know a creation in space and in time. That is, the creation is a becoming. And so here we have all of space and all of time in the universe. The vertical axis represents really time. And so time, as St. Augustine says, is part of creation. And so the cross, which is put in the vertex at the top, this is beautiful because it's at the beginning of time. But this could be a bit reductive. The thing that struck us is that you see, in some way, in the case of the Sagrada Familia, the cross isn't a point that's sort of stuck onto the outside, but it's as if it's in continuity with the whole thing. So this shows us that the Creator is present in every instant of time, the mystery that makes all the things. Now, like in the first instant, in every instant is created. And so it's nice to see this architecture with a cross is united with this becoming of the universe. The Creator represented at the beginning of the universe and in every instant. And at the base of the tower, as Jordi said a bit ago, there are represented the stories of the life of Jesus. And this is perfectly coherent because on this cosmic scale, 2,000 years are much, much smaller than the thickness of the red line which I drew. The mystery is present in every instant of time, cosmic time, but it has surprised us entering in a point in time and space, which is the present, the time of man, our present. And so, like the cupola, the domes of the medieval cathedrals represented the love that moved the sun and the other stars, like this, the Sagrada Familia talks of the same love that moves the universe, a universe that's much vaster and that we know in much more depth than before. It speaks of a love that gives being to all things at every moment and which accompanies the cosmos in its spreading out, in its expansion. It's continuing to become, a becoming that is by now definitively inhabited by the presence of the mystery, who bent down over his creation, becoming a human presence in the event of Jesus Christ, God made man. So at this point, having pointed out the cosmological key of this whole thing, not just space, but the whole time of the universe, the question becomes how to actually how can this intuition, how can we make it become colors, materials, symbols inside the actual tower? So Jordi, can you help us now to pass over the path of how this intuition of Marco could become an artistic project, an architectural project?
Marco, molta grazie. Grazie mille. Il firmamento dell'interno della Torre di Gesù Cristo è un'opera dell'artista Giulio Chotò, realizzata nei laboratori Comeglia, vicino a Barcellona. Come ha spiegato Marco Bersanelli, nella parte più alta, dove si intersecano le 12 sezioni paraboliche con la scala, si rappresenta la prima luce e che resta attraverso colori bianco, rossi e viola, e scendendo verso il basso, accompagnano poco a poco tonalità di blu sempre più intensa. Nei blu emergono anche altri colori, i colori della creazione, della galassia. Sotto vuole che questi colori fossero collegati all'orientamento esteso della torre. Così, nelle sezioni rivolte verso la facciata della Natività si trovano tonalità verdi. Tonalità luminose sono invece orientate verso la facciata della Gloria. Tonalità rossastre verso la facciata della Passione, mentre stella d'oro si orienta verso la torre della Vergine Maria. A metà, importante, a metà dell'altezza dello spazio, seguendo un movimento leggermente elicoidale, macchie dorate passano da una sezione all'altra, testimoniando la presenza dello Spirito Santo nel mondo. Una molto buona idea di sotto. Tutto questo spazio rappresenta la creazione di Dio Trinitario, Padre, Figlio e Spirito Santo. L'artista e gli artigiani hanno sviluppato una tecnica di ceramica smaltata dal risultato simile all'acquarello, probabilmente utilizzata per la prima volta in questa forma. Hanno ottenuto questo effetto organizzando le tessere triangolari in grande superficie parabolica lunghe 5 metri, disposti su un tavolo sulle quali il colore veniva applicato con l'aiuto di spongia e acqua, che permettevano di mescolare e diluire le diverse tonalità. Fu una collaborazione straordinaria tra artista e artigiani, insieme agli architetti e al laboratorio degli artisti della Sagrada Famiglia. Il terminale, la parte superiore, contiene una nuova scala luminosa e trasparente in acciaio e vetro che porterà al centro della croce. Questo spazio è rivestito di piastrelle bianche con tonalità bluastre e dorata, disposto secondo la linea retta generatrice dell'iperboloide dell'interiore. Lo spazio rappresenta l'essenza di Dio. Gaudì definisce la croce negli album del Tempio con questa parola: gravitando sulle le 4 colonne molto alte del transetto, il grande Tiburio sarà sollevato e sormontato a 160 e dopo 176 metri da una croce grandiosa con 4 braccia scalanati per poter osservare il panorama. Al centro ci sarà l'agnello divino. La croce sarà di cristallo e durante il giorno
And during the night, the day will reflect the sun's light, and in the night will be projecting beams of light towards the city. Gaudí projected the arms of the cross to start from the same geometry already used for the tower. It results in a double helical shape. We can serve a small mold cast plaster of the cross of this geometry. The extremity of the 4 arms and the stem of the tower have a square shape, and through a double helical shape, they transform progressively into octagons as we approach the nucleus of the tower. Here, the different surfaces unite using these octagons at the center. The windows have their point of generation at the nucleus of the cross and largen towards the extremities of the forearms, following the curve, the helical curve determined by the double rotation. The four windows, which find themselves in the bottom arm, light up the staircase access. The 8 windows of the horizontal four arms enable us instead to view the landscape. As we read in the description of the cross, Gaudí invites us to look at the surroundings of the Sagrada Familia and the city, and to consider what we see. To think of the people that live around us and that Jesus asks us to love. Following Gaudí's description, which shows us the original models on the curved surfaces and the helical and straight lines of the cross, we can see some triangular pyramids which give the surface an effect of vibration. They give the crystal a vibrational element. And the glass and the ceramic also obtain this element, which gives the characteristic of life, movement. The ceramic, the stone, and the glass are produced by different companies and labs in Catalonia. The assembly of the cross was realized in Germany, like the transport of fish in Barcelona. The last piece was brought on the 20th of February. The cross, a testimony of Christ's presence, extends in every direction with its four arms. It hugs everyone. It invites everyone to follow Jesus with hope and love and peace. The cross was blessed by His Holiness the Pope Leo XIV, 100 years after the death of Gaudí. In his homily, His Holiness said, "In this night, the cross of Christ, which crowns this basilica, is the cross of the last which become the first, the sinner which becomes saint, the dead which become resurrected." Sorry. Beams of light light up the city. I am the light of the world. The Lamb of God finds itself in the central part of the cross, at the inside of the superior arm, and it's the work of the artist Andrea Mastrovito. His proposal was chosen in a competition between 5 artists, and as given by the regulations of the competition, the lamb will be entirely visible from the inside of the cross, while from the outside, his presence will be perceived through the windows. I am very grateful to Andrea for his work and for the great seriousness and enthusiasm with which he approached it. The relationship between him and the Reduzzi artisans, excellent executors of the work, was extraordinary. The architect Maurizio Cortés was the executive director of the entire cross. Thank you.
Andrea.
Andrea, how you as a Bergamasque sculptor, how did you end up working in Catalonia? Tell us about the genesis, the construction, and the significance of this Lamb of God, positioned in the central part of the cross. Hello, everybody. The nicest thing is that I'm not even a sculptor. Thank you, Jordi. Thank you for this fantastic introduction. I end up there, despite not being a sculptor. As an artist, I started with drawings, with performance art, with installations, films, animations, whatever thing. I've done everything except sculpture, and so I ended up being asked to do sculpture. But starting with this architecture is the Winter Garden in Bergamo, and it's right in front of my studio. And briefly, in Bergamo we have Atalanta, the football team, and this was usually the team in which the other football teams go when they come to play against Atalanta. And so this hotel, why am I showing it to you? Not because it's particularly beautiful compared to Sagrada Familia, but because in those days, June in 2023, 10 years after Marco, I was somebody called me and said, listen, there's a possibility that your name could be one of the candidates to realize something in the Sagrada Familia. And so Jordi comes to me, we meet up at the Sagrada, and I show him a bit of my work, and he says, yeah, you can be part of the competition. And the competition will start, I think, towards the autumn of 23. And by January 25, I hadn't even started to do anything because I had various exhibitions to do. My wife was pregnant with twins. So I had my little son who was playing football in the house, and I couldn't concentrate. Anyway, so let's do this, I said. At a certain point, I need to put my head into this project, so I'll go into the hotel this evening. And my wife said, with whom? No, I'll go on my own. So I showed a picture of the empty room. But yeah, obviously somebody could have been hidden in there with me. But yeah, I went to the hotel alone, and I brought with. It was just right opposite my studio, and I brought various books, all my things for work, and things about Gaudí. So I've got this amazing capacity of not reading books but just look at the pictures, and I looked at these pictures, I studying them. At a certain point, a book came to hand that was this one. This book by Marco Bersanelli, The Great Spectacle of the Heavens. I didn't know of Marco in my great ignorance. This book, the beauty of all of this is that it's the theme of this encounter is the love that moves the sun and the other stars. In reality, for me, it was friendship that had moved the sun and the other stars, because this book was lent to me by a friend one evening, and says to me, my son gave me this book, and that I'm reading it, and it talks to the Sagrada Familia. So, okay, I'll put it in my pile of books to read. And that evening, I started to leaf it through it, and I thought, I actually, in the end, managed to actually read the book, and I learnt all. I'm really happy because Jordi and Martina have pretty much told all the stuff about the scientific and architectonic side. So I'm just here doing what I am able to do. So they showed us everything, the book said everything that Marco's shown us, and so I thought, how am I going to think about this three-dimensional space to create a sculpture? So I did this wonderful drawing, beautiful drawing like this. So I think I was watching football on the telly at the time, but I thought, I think we were losing, but anyway. So I was there trying to imagine something, and so that I was reading this book, this cosmic microwave background, and these rays, this initial light, and I think I need to put something that has to do with light, with this primordial energy, with something that we can't know, but something that's beyond everything, like the beginning of everything. And I start to throw some sketches around, think about rays and reading about rays, and from what Jordi says, you can see the Sagrada is built from paraboloids and hyperboloids. So a paraboloid is like if you make a hyperboloid. If you take a cylinder of wires and you twist it, then you get this shape that is in 3D. That is the hyperboloid. So you take these shapes, you cut it in half, just make a sketch of it, pop a lamp in the middle. So let's see, maybe it could work. So I started to do a few sketches, rendering with lengthening the rays, making the paraboloid a little less harsh, and so on. And what did I see? What does this symbol remind to me? It makes me think. I start to think a bit of lamb. The lamb needs to be done of a material that responds to light. So glass and gold. We've seen the rays are all gold. So I started to think of it as something made of pieces of light, little pieces, for many reasons. Some I'll show at the end, but first one was a 3D representation of Gaudí. Did his mosaics and made from many little bits of ceramic. In this case, we're talking about glass, but he reuses pieces. And so why fragmented? Because I wanted to show that this lamb could be a symbol of our life, of this moment which is continually fragmented in many little images that we give ourselves on these little screens that we've got in our pockets. And our contemporary life is completely fragmented in thousands of things to do that they're no longer illuminated by the sun, but by this little light in our pocket. And so this fragmentation, what made me think of it as sort of, if the rays as kind of energy, this fragmentation needs to bring a blast of energy, original energy, that as Marco then takes the form of the galaxies and the universe. And so working on this, I started to think of doing some 3D sketches and made this luminous white image like we can see here. And then I thought that something, this reminded me of something. It was the Ecstasy of Santa Teresa by Bernini. And so I was thinking of this golden form, and at the same time there's this, inside this work there's this sculpture, Saint Teresa, who is also called the Bride of the Lamb. And so with this white figure who reacts to the light, like Saint Teresa, is pierced by it, and there are many details on this. And so here you can see that the lamb is placed inside this structure, the semi-paraboloid structure, and which is like Saint Teresa under these rays, struck by these rays. Another reference that's fundamental for the development of the project was the presence of this mosaic, which shows above the altar in the Sagrada, the God the Father represented as this sort of golden triangle of mosaic pieces. This form of the golden triangle gave the form to these sort of little crossings between the rays. So the various hyperboloids join up together in that way. And so third point, the baldachin of Jesus Christ, again above the altar. So you have the altar, above it the baldacchino, and God the Father, and then at the very top, is the Tower of Jesus Christ, and there the Lamb will be. So started to think of something like this, and this sort of chapel or hat from which the light comes. And you can see all the various writings that are part of the New Testament that recount the characteristics of the origin of the first project. And this was the sketch, the model that was realised for the times, and then this was done very well by my assistants and while I was off to Dublin to watch the Europa League, and then went to Barcelona in a big case with all these bits, and we waited a month or two until one day the call from Jordi came. My phone rings. I see a Spanish number. I thought, oh, yep, let's see. And Jordi says to me, Andrea, you were chosen. The first thing that I did was I went to get the album of Barcelona, the Song of Barcelona by Freddie Mercury. I went to get that record. I put it on my record player. My wife had gone away. She was in America, and I called my wife. It's probably early where she is, and sent, without saying anything to her, I put my phone close to the record, and this Freddie Mercury voice comes out singing this, and after 30 seconds my wife says, "What is this nonsense?" Okay, never mind. So off we go ahead, and in the years we managed to, with thanks the Studio Reduzzi, Stefano here, the master glass workers and other artisans, really let's applaud them because they are exceptional. We managed in the last months to really give form to this lamb, which was then installed for the visit of the Pope. You see, these are some of the details. These are we call them golden potato chips, potato crisps. These things that take the light of the golden rays and they turn it into the light that reflects on the lamb. Here you can see the two guys being the lamb, which is made of thousands of pieces of glass, and in Murano glass. That Lino did this. He formed them by hand with his tools, and they finally were able to see it. And you'll see the lamb installed. This is the final result. Thank you. And we see it as a lamb crowned by these rays which contain the words of the Lord. I'll be very quick because I only got a minute left. So I'll show you the human and divine part of this lamb. It's not just the fruit of geometry and science, but also it has, like all my work, a strong human equivalence. So this is not just in these things I've done in churches, but in all my work. You see this detail that the lamb who suffers, the lamb has been cut, been knifed. And if anybody know who this is John Coffey in Green Mile. In Green Mile, because I started how starting. You see it. So I started with Bernini and geometry, and then and inside me there's still there's sort of lower popular questions, and this low and high characteristic work. So this I'm tired, boss. I'm tired always going around like a sparrow in the rain. I'm tired of not having a friend with me who can say where we're going to go, where we come from, and why. I'm tired above all for the evil that men do to other men. I'm tired of all the pain that I hear, that I see in the world every day. It's like there's too much in me. It's like there's pieces of glass fixed in my head that continuously. This is the final words of John Coffey. And months after doing the Agnus Dei, I had this idea of doing a thing in which all the pieces of glass represent, in fact, the wounds that Christ takes up on himself on the cross. All these thousands of pieces, and these are taken from broken glasses. And so these represent the wounds of Christ. It's not just religion, but work, but also popular culture. And so, you see, the lamb is intangible. You can't touch it, but who wants to touch it uses it badly. And there's another reference we have in Indiana Jones and the Ark of the Covenant. So those who open the Ark of the Covenant for bad use, they come to a bad end. And Indiana Jones in the third episode, he dreams from this guy drinks from the Holy Grail because he wants to use it and ends up like this. So this lamb that couldn't be touched, that must be used well. This thing can't be used. And so I want to finish. The lamb has writing on it in phosphorus that shows up at sunset, and this is the Ecce Agnus, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. It's written, taking from the Papyrus 66, the original Greek from the Gospel of John, from this manuscript. And so this is like from the film, the Ten Commandments, which get inscribed in the stone in light, and that shine again today within the Lamb of God. Thanks, everybody. Chiara. You've recently published 2 books on Antoni Gaudí, and as how would the Catalan architect see this tower? Can you help us to get into this question, to go into the way in which Gaudí lived this work, and in particular the time of its construction?
Well, first of all, thank you for letting me put the accent on time as part of the story. We always think of the inauguration for the work as the most important day, but Pope Leo instead came to Barcelona to put an accent to a concrete aspect of the Sagrada Familia, which is its origins, its becoming. He said this church is in one building made of many churches. It follows one unique project. It's still in construction. Its imperfection is not a defect, but it's a testimony to a desire, not something that's missing, but a promise. And it's an incomplete building, not thanks to the accidental death of Gaudí, but thanks to his clear desire. Gaudí introduces us to a new mentality where things assume a truer meaning, which comes out of the idea and becomes tangible. So the most significant meaning we can attribute to it, but is not something unfinished, but even though the word unfinished indicates something that's missing, it has a common popular meaning that's negative. It opposes itself to the divine, to the becoming. The Sagrada Familia becomes something, a history that is still writing itself. It implicates relationship with one another. Even when you work by yourself, we always work for someone. Many times Gaudí was presented as a solitary man. Instead, he had many friends, many poets amongst them. The most famous one is here in the picture. In an article, he imagines a visitor of the year 2100, when he imagines the Sagrada Familia to be finished. This visitor will think of the visitors of the past with envy, because they will have seen the Sagrada Familia in construction, and some of them may have even recognized Gaudí. The poet finishes the article explaining this man to envy would be himself writing it. But we inside are also men to be envied, because we are witnesses to the growing of the Sagrada Familia. When someone meeting Gaudí in the Sagrada Familia asked him, "Who are you?" Gaudí introduced himself saying, "I'm a collaborator of the Creator." The visitor had him in front of themselves a genius, who thought that his genius was and recognized that the beginnings of everything was God. He decided to divest himself of his genius. His is a poverty of a Franciscan sense, not a negation of beauty, but a teaching to a beauty that becomes always attached to God. Gaudí took a radical decision to look at things looking for their origin. He repeated, being original means going back to the origins. For this reason, everyone recognizes the Tower of Jesus, the story of the universe, not its representations, but its origins, as part of its story of the Savior. Christ is the Alpha and the Omega. Gaudí was a man who was happy to belong to a story that began before him, a Sagrada Familia that continued within generations. And to respond to your question, Martina, I think that Gaudí today would be very happy because he was the custodian of a great project. Of some who couldn't bring it to its end. He was a free man who chose liberally to partake in divine creation for a work that transcended his life, where he leaves other people free too. He enters into the logic of creation, so the originality for Gaudí doesn't live in eccentric means, but in the possibility that his works can continue to live, and that it's for this reason that Sagrada Familia is a work that's still in its phase of creation and becoming. He is the first of the in his work, he represents himself as the first shepherd that goes to see the baby Jesus and the gardener of paradise. In 1900, a volume is published in Barcelona, which is titled The Sky. It's a book illustrated for the first time with photos of galaxies, which back then were called nebulas. These enter in Gaudí's images as a collaborator of God, forming a new representation in his architecture, not as a decoration, but as a possibility to be read as a promise of being part of God's creation. The sky is represented like this in all his architecture, the civil architecture and in the Sagrada Familia too. Profoundly different works, which use the technique of tricandis, which is a mosaic technique mentioned already before, where fragments become the work. There's two anecdotes which come back to my head when we talk of trincadis. One was recounted by one of the family friends of Gaudí, who lived with him in Parguel, and it recounts a singular episode. The house broke a plate, and instead of asking sorry, they exclaimed, "Who knows how happy Gaudí will be?" They broke a plate, which, if we observe it, is an object of profoundly symbolic of the house, of the domesticity, which passes from generations and breaks its value when it doesn't belong to a full set anymore. But this moment of rupture becomes a moment of joy. It's not a symbol of loss, but a symbol of good, because it becomes part of something greater than itself. This becomes part of the Sagrada Familia, the first tower, of Barnaby, which Gaudí saw completed. On the pinnacle, we find the trincadis with the episcopal attributes, dressed in gold, which serves as with medicinal properties. This isn't needed when you're healed, so would they find a new purpose? We knew too that a clockmaker who was fixing clocks, seeing this pinnacle in the Sagrada Familia, how wonderful. Gaudí was so happy that he went house to house to tell all his friends about the episode. Like a portrait of everything broken, collaborating with God becomes beauty. Something similar happened between us in our friendship, where often we've been able to say how beautiful in front of the other. A synthesis of this I'll read in a drawing of Andrea, which is a portrait of Gaudí in a book for children about nature. Imagining the Sagrada Familia, it's a book. It's a drawing he prepared for one of my books. Gaudí on a Bible, on a book of Marco and another work of Jordi, but also accompanied by Jordi and Marco in scripture and a biography of Gaudí in a complicated moment of his life. But for me, it was a sign of Gaudí following us even in difficult moments. We don't know yet what impact the Tower of Jesus Christ will have on the people who see it. But I can serve as a witness that today we are here as friends for having collaborated with this intention for good, with domestic happiness that broke the plate, and the stupor of the clockmaker who who exclaimed, "How wonderful!" I think that they will envy us, like the poets had foreseen, and this is based on a certainty that we've already lived when the star of the Tower of the Madonna was inaugurated, the 8th of December in 2021. That something very surprising happened. That Christmas, the great majority of the decorations imitated this very star. The nativity scene, which was often focused on traditional scenes, they put instead a big star in the center, echoing the star of the Sagrada Familia. So the star no longer belonged only to the temple, but also radiated its impact on the city. The city, which is where the stars aren't visible, but find a new sky where Christ is the central star in a new Gala Placidia made city, and a cross with all the stars surrounding it. I think that this is the heredity we find from Gaudí. He doesn't leave us only the construction of a church, but also the construction of a place that educates to a new gaze, able to transfigure all of reality.
And so we've heard that this tower is born from a collaboration with this attention towards good, which makes friends and constructs something great. And a collaboration made of little things, little concrete things, the things from a book, an intuition, a conversation with a colleague, the contact of a friend, physical encounters, material ones, something that goes against the current in a world that's obsessed with virtuality and what's digital. Instead, these physical encounters, they build one stone on top of another, a place, a physical place that you can go to, a place that is not a mausoleum of the past, but as St. John Paul II said, a construction made of living stones. And so the non-finishedness that as Chiara was talking about isn't a curse, because time and space are dwelt in, inhabited. This universe that's made of stars, of planets and galaxies isn't empty. At the center there is the Lamb, a love which isn't abstract, but which reaches man here and now. And so all of the broken bits of our life within this love can become a work of art. And time and space, the two great boundaries of our human existence within which constrain us, are no longer limits, but the possibility that is given to us for a journey, moved us too by this same love that moves the sun and the other stars. recall to you that each one of us sustaining the meeting, and you'll find all the fieros will have the Dona Ora points to where we can construct together spaces of beauty, hope, and togetherness. Well, thank you all again, and ask you to thank once again our guests and applaud them.
Questo è un luogo che genera dialogo,
Qualcuno che si impegna, che si batte.
che approfondisce la conoscenza e sostiene la fiducia. È un crocevia dove si incontra chi desidera il vero, il bello, il giusto e il bene. È una testimonianza di speranza nel cuore ferito del presente. E tutto questo
Proporre con la propria vita.
esiste anche grazie a te.